Meteorology can be defined as the scientific study of state and behavior of Earth's atmosphere and climate. It can also be defined as a study of relationships and changes in temperature, air pressure, moisture, and wind in the atmosphere that produce the weather at any place on Earth. I have taken this quote from a paper written by our guest, Tyrone Sutherland, in a paper entitled Weather Observing and Forecasting and the Hurricane Warning System in the Caribbean. He said, to study the weather and to make weather forecasts, it is necessary to collect data over the entire planet. Certainly, doesn't sound like an easy task. But then again, if you are Tyrone Sutherland, who some would say had been prepared for a life in meteorology ever since he was born, this is indeed an easy task. To read out his resume, it would take a significant portion of this program. But just let's start by saying, where in this world would you meet someone who has been groomed from birth for his profession? While he began his career in meteorology in 1969 in his native St. Lucia, Mr. Sutherland's world in meteorology began, some would say, from the time he took his first breath. It helps when you have a mother and a father as your tutor, doesn't it, Tyrone?
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me on this program. And you start talking about my father and mother, you really bring me back into a very pleasant part of my life. In fact, I will go a step further and say my grandfather, which is part of the story itself that has to be mentioned. In reality, I'm a third-generation weatherman in my family. That sounds odd to some people, but in reality, around 1900, the United States Congress passed a resolution to establish a hurricane warning system in the Caribbean. And remember, we were colonial in those days, so the British Admiralty established some weather stations in the Commonwealth, or the colonies as they were in those days. And the United States established what was then the United States Weather Bureau. And they established some stations in St. Kitts, Dominica, and St. Lucia. Although British, in partnership with the British, they established United States Weather Bureau stations. So my grandfather, Norman Sutherland, established those 3 stations, but he was stationed in St. Lucia. And so the St. Lucia branch of the United States Weather Bureau was formed in around 1900. When my father came along, and when he was old enough, he was taken on board by the United States and trained, and he took over the U.S. Weather Bureau station. And my mother, when she got married to him, joined as well. And in fact, she's the longest serving, because my father died when I was 17, and my mother carried on the U.S. Weather Bureau station in those days. So I have been around weather observing from, as you said, almost from birth. And it was the thing we did. The whole St. Lucia hurricane warning system was under the United States Weather Bureau, and my father and mother developed. And I was taught when I was still in school how to make weather observations, although as a sort of a relief observer, as they were called in those days. So if they, for some reason, were busy, I would think. And so while it was informal training, it was done by the US and my parents. And but I wanted to be a veterinary. I wanted to do veterinary sciences. And my father said, you should be a meteorologist. And I said, no way, not another Sutherland in meteorology. That's how it started off.
But it's not a profession that you've regretted?
Oh, no. Actually, when my father died and I was 17, I began to read his books, which I never looked at. I saw stuff that was so fascinating in science of the atmosphere. I just got hooked. And soon after, I told my mother, I think I want to do meteorology.
To us, when we, for example, look at the weather reports, in fact, for many of us in the Caribbean, the only time we become interested in the weather is during the period June to December, when we have
the hurricanes around.
Hurricane season. What is so fascinating about being a meteorologist, being involved in weather prediction?
You cannot tell the weather by looking outside the window and saying what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 days. And I think that's what your introduction was rather hinting at. To know what the weather is like, you have to look at the whole globe. So all countries, every single country, political things being aside, have to collaborate for us to know what's going on in the whole world. So in a very coordinated manner, every country makes weather observations at set times. Every hour, round the clock, never stops. And the whole point is that we collect this data, and then we can look at what is the state of the atmosphere. Then we can apply our scientific knowledge, mathematical equations, physics, and so on, and try to predict what this state of the atmosphere will look like in 12 hours, 24 hours, 2 days, 3 days, and interpret that. And then we see what the weather would look like based on this science in 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 days. And that's the fascinating part, because you have to work together, everybody, to get this to happen. So, you know, in the early days, we didn't have all the technology to see the whole picture, but it was going on behind the scenes. As our meteorological services developed over time, we began to get access to all of that. And so today's weather forecast offices have reams of data from all over the world. And, you know, it's just fascinating.
It must be like a kid in a toy shop.
Yeah, almost, because it's a highly computerized profession. And just seeing the mathematical equations and physics that you've learned in university being applied on a day-to-day basis is itself fascinating. Even to me, I've been in this business for a long time, and I will never get enough of it, because it's not perfect. We still have to work to improve things, and that is part of the challenge.
In the years that you've been as a meteorologist serving up and down the Caribbean, what has been the most fascinating aspect of the job for you so far?
The most fascinating still is, for me, hurricanes. Right? Although the climate aspect we will get to, but the climate aspect is always there. But hurricanes, I've always been a severe weather specialist in my life. So starting off in the Caribbean with hurricanes, I remember working through Hurricane Allen in 1980 that struck St. Lucia, and working 36.5 hours without sleep. It's what we do, but you know, just what goes on in a hurricane at the time is so amazing. It's this massive engine that what we feel, people get fascinated when I say this, when you get the destruction of a hurricane over a place, all the wind and rain, that's less than 10% of the actual energy, you know, in the hurricane. Most of it is carried up into the upper atmosphere that's spread around the globe as part of a larger system. But for me, on the ground, just dealing with the impacts is itself fascinating. While, you know, you don't want it to damage and kill people, but the science itself is awesome.
I have been a survivor of hurricanes. I survived Hurricane Hugo in Dominica, then I made the mistake and gone across to Montserrat to work and survived the big one that hit Montserrat.
Yes.
And the people in Trinidad where I now live would say, hey, they don't want me here because hurricanes would
Follow
follow.
you.
Yeah, but to the ordinary person, the person that would look at the hurricane, I look at the hurricane in terms of, we look at the damage, we look at you say, what we see is just 10% of the destruction and what have you. So what happens to the rest of the 100% of that hurricanes? What then should we look at, let's say, next coming hurricane season or this current hurricane season?
Well, we are going through a period now where, of course, there are questions as whether climate change is having an impact and so forth. There is no question in my mind the earth is getting warmer. Our oceans to the east of us are getting warmer. And that's the source of the energy for a hurricane, the warm oceans. And other conditions in the atmosphere have to be right. So if we get a warmer ocean, we have to look for more activity. It doesn't mean we can say country X or country Y will get hit. That's not what we mean. We mean we can expect great activity. Now, we talk about the damage over a particular island or a group of islands, but the energy from the hurricane is part of the whole global system that is required to balance the whole atmosphere in the world, the whole Earth. The energy from the tropics gets thrown out towards the polar regions, help balance there. So someone once asked me in St. Lucia on television years back, why don't we just throw a nuclear bomb in it and just blow it up? Hey, that's throwing a match into a fire. There's so much energy there that's part of the global system, the whole Earth, that we feel the section of it near the ground, as damaging as it is. But there's a lot more going on in hurricanes.
Some say hurricanes are nature's way of cleaning the Earth.
No, it's part of nature's balance of the Earth system. And not just hurricanes. Frontal systems and cold front and warm fronts and other parts. It's all part of one nature's system of balancing the temperatures and so on around the world. The whole rotation of the Earth is controlled by all the atmospheric behavior. So it's part of a system. If you have what do you call these, a pressure cooker, and you put your hand on top of the pressure cooker that's cooking, you know it'll blow up on you. Well,
keep it down.
It's like this. So a hurricane has to have a vent. The atmosphere has to have a vent, and so on. So the hurricane is just part of that system. Unfortunately, we have to learn to live with hurricanes, build our homes appropriately in the right places, and we can survive hurricanes if we try.
When you say we could survive hurricanes if we try, what do you really
Well,
mean?
what I mean is, you don't build your house on the bank of a river if you're going to get flooded out, right? You've got to build it appropriately according to codes and so on, different places, and you'll find that you can survive hurricanes in the proper way.
Some of our policymakers do not seem to think the whole question of, in fact, some of them regard climate change as a fake. As a meteorologist, somebody who is deeply involved in examining the climatic conditions in which we live, and you, as you rightfully pointed out, it's a global issue. So while we hear, for example, in Barbados or Trinidad or St. Lucia saying, this is one thing, you now telling us, look at it in the context of a global situation.
Yes. Yes.
Why to some of us, we could accept there is global change. We see on television the Antarctica and these places where the cold, where the snow and ice,
the icebergs are
melting away.
Yep.
And yet our policymakers, maybe for economic reasons, are not seeing that.
Of course you're looking at it as the primary reason, economic reasons. You can get any small scientist to go on television and say it's a fake. But if the serious scientists will never say that, because we have data that shows the Earth warming, say, from the Industrial Revolution in the last century, right? And it's been constantly rising. Now, it is clear that it is human activity that's largely to blame. There is a natural occurrence too. But think of it, if you want to cut the global warming that is occurring, it's going to hit a lot of economic sectors in many countries. So the real, genuine, honest scientists are not going to say that it's not occurring. It is those who have an economic motive that would say it's not.
And using your crystal ball, where do you see us going?
Well, for the foreseeable future, it's going to continue to rise. It's not going to be something you could switch off quickly. I am hopeful that some of the measures that reduce the carbon footprint will slow it down. But I think it's going to take a little while before we start seeing that.
The Caribbean had been pushing this idea 1.2, 1.2, 1.2, if it rises or what have you. We went to the Paris negotiations, Paris Agreement, using this 1.2, 1.2. Is 1.2 adequate?
you have to set a target in which we could live with the consequences. Above that, we are really in risky areas. People will still argue whether it's 1.2 or even as high as 2. But if you don't restrict it below a certain level, such as the 1.2, the consequences are something that even I, as a meteorologist, cannot even tell you what the consequences are. But what we are already seeing suggests to me that it wouldn't be nice if we don't hold it down as low as we can.
A 2016 study released by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization noted climate change is expected, and I'm quoting, to increase the intensity and frequency of droughts in the Caribbean.
Well, you see, drought periods, I no doubt we will see periods of drought, but I also think that the trend is that when we have rain, we're going to also have a lot more rain. The two sides. So during the drought periods, they might be quite intense.
So
but during the rain period, you may have a lot of heavier rainfall. That there is also that other side of it. So, you know, the impact on your seasons, whether, you know, it's going to depend on the type of rainfall. And it's not just in the Caribbean, we're going to see this, but in the tropical areas in general, you know, I think that we're going to see heavier rainfall when it's raining, and in the dry periods, very dry.
So we're still going to see what were being referred to as the El Nino factor.
Because the El Nino is part of a global, it's looking at the temperatures in the Pacific, but it impacts on the weather around the world. So, you know, we have to monitor everything that's going on in the world, not just our region.
I just want to come back a little from your earlier days when you joined or got infused with meteorology and what have you. And I try to figure, why then would you have left the warmth of the Caribbean and go on to Canada and Geneva? Looking
back at it, remember, I was one of 2 persons that started in the St. Lucia Met Service. The other name is Bruno Lamontagne in St. Lucia. He and I were the first 2. We started this service under the guidance of my own mother, who would work with the government to set it up. And at a young age of 28, I was already ahead of the service. And I looked at myself and said, do I stay here in this job from 28 till 65 or 60, whatever the retirement age, doing the same thing? And that was not for me. I needed to explore my own avenues in the career of meteorology, which means somewhere else. And since large number of my family members were already in Canada, I chose to go to Canada, and I joined the Canadian Weather Service and opened up a new area of other areas in meteorology that just fascinating too.
So what was the difference in let's say, the Canadian experience as against the St. Lucian or Caribbean experience? I mean, apart from the fact, yes, we don't have snow in the Caribbean, but what?
Well, it was the diversity of weather in the temperate regions. When I went to Canada, we flew to Calgary in Alberta. I had never experienced 0-degree temperature. We landed at Calgary, it was minus 30, right? Minus 35, actually. So, I mean, I got to learn about the Arctic type weather, then about the snow and so on. But then also in the summertime, we had tornadoes, which is something that I didn't have to experience down here in the same way. The odd you know, water spout and so forth. Right. But the real stuff. So I had a variety of things to deal with in the northern areas that was fascinating. And I got involved up there in also in their severe weather. I was a severe weather specialist. So I took my hurricane experience with me and I built on the severe weather in the wintertime and had a good time doing that.
Do you think we in the Caribbean have now moved away from, when you speak to the ordinary Caribbean person, first thing he'll tell you, hey, we only got two sets of weathers. As a matter of fact, two types of seasons. Rainy season or dry season. We have nothing like winter, spring, summer, autumn, and what have you. That comes with its own challenges in meteorology and what have you. Given your experience, given your role, given your interaction with Caribbean people, do you think we have now come to realize that we have more than just the weather, the dry and rainy season?
Well, it still is basically a dry and a rainy, but you also have those transition periods in between, which could be either. Or we may have a prolonged dry season or a prolonged rainy season. It still is basically the two seasons. But you know, we know that June to November is our hurricane season. It doesn't mean you only start raining in June. And each island may have its own time. I live in Trinidad right now. They've got particular features in Trinidad which you would hardly see further up on the islands, making their rainy season slightly different time. You know, so go across to the west in Jamaica or Belize, and the timing is a little different. So it's not set June to November. They all have the peculiarities, but in large fashion, it is a two-season type of thing, in tropics in general. But outside of that, then you have 4 clear seasons, which, you know.
Given the fact that we're not doing good in cricket, people would say, well, in the Caribbean, if you need rain, just
put a cricket match. Put a cricket match, yeah.
So you'd have rain.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have the drought situation. But then again, West Indies is not winning. So.
Well, I don't take me into that topic of cricket. because I've had a passion for cricket that has unfortunately waned because of how things are going. But just, you know, to take you back to, yes, when I left the Caribbean, I went to Canada and joined the Canadian Weather Service. I also moved on from there. Yes. I joined the United Nations organization, the World Meteorological Organization in Switzerland. So my family went over there, and I was in their tropical cyclone program. And again, the tropical cyclones is the more generic term for around the globe. We call it typhoons in the Pacific, hurricanes in our region. But so I came back to my specialty of hurricanes, and in this way, in the UN, helping countries like the Caribbean in building up their own warning systems for the tropical cyclones. And I did that for many years there, and so forth, and some other things in Switzerland. Before the opportunity to come back at the CMO, Caribbean Meteorological Organization, came up in '99. I couldn't turn my back. I had to come back.
You're a regionalist.
Yes, yes, yes.
But I'm looking back at some of the tasks that the regional governments would have given you. And one of them was to, and I quote, replace the current aging CMO weather radars with new Doppler
yeah.
weather radars.
Yeah.
Well,
in my earlier days, when I started my own career here, we had the Caribbean Meteorological Organization had put up radars in Belize, Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and in Guyana. These were Japanese-made Mitsubishi radars. As time went on, the technology changed, and the radar network began to fall apart, so to speak, because of primarily technology. There were analog radars, and one by one, and we no longer could get parts. When I came back from Switzerland, my predecessor had started it, Edward Berridge, and I was working with them from Switzerland. But when I came, I picked up the project, and European Union funded with in the region. We replaced all the old radars, so we have a modern radar system, and because it's all digital now, we collaborate with the other countries in the region, There's the Americans in Puerto Rico, the French islands, all the way down. So we have a chain, a network of radars from Belize, come right across and come down to Guyana. And it's available on the net. Anybody could see it anytime, either individually or collectively. It was a major project, 13 million euros to put up those first set of radars, and then one later on in Cayman Islands. Major component of our warning system in that here.
We talk about new warning systems and what have you. Have you come across any Caribbean country that has said, because maybe economic reasons, that, as they would say in Trinidad, God is a Trini?
No. There's, even though people might say that, I mean, weather knows no boundaries. Weather respects no person. We have weather of various types going from Guyana all the way up the islands, all the way out west to Jamaica and Belize, Cayman Islands. And it's going to impact on people in various ways. Look what happened in Trinidad recently. That was not a tropical storm. Trinidad got flooded, one of the worst set of floodings that I have seen in Trinidad. So we have various types of weather. Now, every Caribbean island has particular features in weather and have to have warning systems to suit. And including our non-English speaking Caribbean partners in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, we collaborate a lot, with those countries to try to help them. So it's one of those things that language doesn't matter. We talk one language, and that's the science. We have very close partnership with the French in Martinique and Guadeloupe, French Guiana. We have close partnership with Dominican and Haiti, Cuba, all of that. We work hand in hand all the time. I can pick up the phone and call any of them at any time. That's how it is, because weather knows no boundaries. In your outgoing position as the coordinating director of CMO, I want to just look back on that post. What do you think you brought to it? Well, the fact, when I came to the region, having worked in the World Meteorological Organization, I knew that we have to make sure that the foundation that my predecessors had made and the partnerships globally had to be strengthened. And when I came back to the region in '99, immediately I was elected to the Executive Council of the World Meteorological Organization, the UN body. And subsequently, I had 2 terms as a vice president. The reason for that is that the Caribbean region, as I mentioned before, is part of the globe. And the only way small islands like ours can be part of the system is if somebody or persons in the region are part of the global things. We were able to make sure the Caribbean is integrated into the whole system. So in our region, we collaborate with the United States and Canada and Mexico and all of these on a day-to-day basis, right? Through the world body or directly, so that our standards are the same, right? Across the board. And as the Caribbean Meteorological Organization, that's a primary function. We have to ensure that our countries are up to the international standards, down to the training, the way they observe weather, the way they forecast, all of it is up to a standard and so the Caribbean Meteorological Organization plays a fundamental role in ensuring that, because we are small islands. If we don't have an organization like the CMO, we don't have a voice. But the CMO is so well known in the region that the larger countries like the United States and Canada always consult with or collaborate with us on anything in the region. That's how it is, because we are part of one. And that is one of the things that I have enjoyed doing over the years, to make sure that our role is internationally known. Right here in Barbados, you know of the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, which is an organ of the Caribbean Meteorological Organization, which has a global role to play in the education and training of our scientists, in they're an instrument center, they're a specialized center in satellite meteorology for the benefit of the region, but all done under the umbrella of the World Meteorological Organization. So the CMO has that deep partnership with the global body and other institutions either through the institute here in Barbados or the headquarters in Trinidad, or directly through National Met Services and so on. So that's a big role that we play in this coordination.
It's not a profession, or, well, I guess for you it's not a profession, it's a beyond
life.
profession.
A life. It's a life.
Is it something that you probably would have said on second thoughts, I really should have been a vegetarian?
No.
No.
I would never have changed anything. Although I was close to going to do veterinary medicine, but no, I wouldn't change a thing. Even to this day, I'm still fascinated by many things. You think I've seen it all. In 50 years in this profession, you think I've seen it all. No, there's still stuff that fascinates me all the time. And
you, unlike you, do you have the 4th or 5th generation Sutherland coming up?
I tried. My children have said, no more Sutherlands in meteorology. But at least one of them I know is a big scientist in Canada. So I don't know, maybe their children might get it. Because they're all fascinated by it, you know, even though they're not in the field.
On the lighter side of things, many times you hear people say, I don't trust these weather fellas. I look at my weather report in the morning that says today's going to be a fine day. So I leave my umbrella at home, my raincoat at home, and 2 minutes later I'm in a flood.
I hope it won't be a flood. I hope it'll be just a small shower. But you have to understand, meteorology is not an exact science. We look at all the conditions around of the atmosphere. We apply our knowledge and physics, equations of physics, we project them into the future. That's really how our forecast is made. We project the conditions now into the future based on the maths and physics of the atmosphere. And then we look at the results. So maybe the results in 1 day, 2 days. And we reinterpret that into weather. That's basically what we do. Well, obviously, it depends on the results we get. Sometimes maybe some of the data that went in might not have been the best, or we missed some data. So the results we get might be not quite accurate. That's a part of life. That's what we do. We try our best to look at various solutions that we run different models, numerical models and try to get the best one. That is what we think. But it's inevitable that we're not going to get it totally right all the time. We want to be more right than not right, but it'll always happen, you know.
When we hear about hurricanes, one of the things we're always very fascinated about is the so-called hunter aircraft going into.
Yeah. Yep, the hurricane hunters.
How do, I mean, from a layman point of view, how do we get into this place to accurately look at the weather and come back and tell us? I mean, we know, yes, it's a plane going through there, but we know about, as you spoke about, that 10%, this force, this what have you. And just as a side, do you think Caribbean people will one day?
The hurricane hunters that we know about, it's a service that the United States has provided for a long time in this region. It's run by the United States Air Force primarily, the U.S. Air Force Reserves, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Not too many parts of the world do it, but it is a contribution the United States has made that we are all extremely grateful for. We have in this region a hurricane committee which has all the countries, all the scientists and all. And in that committee we establish how the hurricane hunters should fly, what we want them to get. So there's a pattern we decide on among ourselves.
So therefore what you're saying is not let's say a hurricane coming around and these American people would go up and then come back and tell us a weather report.
No. It's a coordinated thing together. We have a hurricane in certain areas, we know it's there. We have satellites that you can see it. We decide when we want the plane to go, because when the aircraft goes in, it takes a lot more detailed data. We want to know the atmospheric pressure in the center, we want to know the winds around the periphery, and we have designed in this group what patterns we want the plane to fly. and when we want. So they go out and they get readings, and they're sent back to us, all of us, via satellite. We get the data in right away, and we can apply it to our various models we have to see what's going on and things, to see if our forecasts are okay, if we have to modify what we're saying about it. But the aircraft fly in an organized way, run by primarily the U.S. Air Force Reserves and no other extent. So, but it's all pre-planned, all practiced, all the time.
It has to be practiced. I mean, if you're talking about going into the eye of a hurricane and staying
there,
there.
special people, but they will fly. The ones that we tend to see a lot of are those that fly in the lower levels. They can drop instruments in the eye to get readings of the pressure and so on. We also have some jet aircraft that fly at the higher levels to get the periphery and so on, the broader things and so on. So all that data is fed back to the weather services, right, as it's being taken. So.
Earlier on, you spoke about hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, and what have you. What's the difference? Why is there that need?
It's the name of in the area. In the Pacific, they're called typhoons. In the Caribbean, we call them hurricanes. The names have come from the local language. Hurricane, huracan. It's the name that the native people in the region called it.
So hurricanes.
No, they're identical. So a typhoon in the Pacific is identical to a hurricane in the Caribbean. It's the same process, identical system. It's just called typhoon out there. But the generic term for all, we call them tropical cyclones. But that's if we're taking it as a globe. But in this region, we call them tropical storm, hurricanes, and so on. And the Pacific is tropical storm and typhoon. Same thing.
Tyrone, you're leaving. Any last word for Caribbean people? Who knows? Maybe how to change your son's mind.
My son is a writer. He's in the film business out in Canada somewhere, and I know.
He may need to do a film on.
Well, I know he writes things about it and so on. But no, listen. Meteorology is a career that anybody who gets into it will enjoy it as long as they love maths and physics. That's the primary thing, mathematics and physics. If you're not a physics person, if you're not a mathematics person,
forget it.
Become a lawyer or something else. But if you love science, it's a thing, and there's a lot there's a lot going on in the region that is, quite fascinating, from Guyana all the way to Belize. It's everybody has different specialties and so on, but it's a lovely career. I have no regrets.
No regrets.
Nope.
Tyrone, before we end the interview, it would be very, what's the word I'm looking for, remiss of me not to say that you've worked all over the globe, Canada, Geneva, the Caribbean, and far afield. And you've probably built up colleagues, people who you will look back and say, yes, not those you went to drink with and those you partied with and what have you, but those who enriched your profession.
I may also have partied with them.
Oh, well, that's part of the profession. And they have some messages that they would like to leave with us. So here they are.
Good day, Tyrone. Couldn't think of a better place than to express our appreciation than at the Cayman Turtle Center, which you love so much. Thank you very much for all you've done for the Cayman Islands National Weather Service.
Mr. Sutherland, on behalf of the Turks and Caicos Islands Airports Authority, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your contributions made to the industry, Turks and Caicos Islands Airports Authority, and Turks and Caicos at large. You have led by example and have set a standard to be followed. You have undoubtedly left your mark. Happy retirement. All the best in your future endeavors.
Mr. Sutherland, on behalf of the Director of Disaster Management, Dr. Virginia Clevo, and the entire staff, we would like to wish you the best in the next phase in your life. Thanks for your dedication all these years. We will definitely miss you. Happy retirement.
Well, I want to say congratulations to my very good friend Tyrone Sutherland on his retirement. I've known Tyrone for a long time, very, very long time. In fact, from my early childhood days, he was my first boss. He was the one who drove me into higher studies. And although I may have departed a little from meteorology, he continued, and I'm very happy that he has walked that path, and he has left so many of us behind to follow in his footsteps. And I think the Caribbean is going to be a little bit poorer with him having given up the helm of the Caribbean Meteorological Organization. But I know those who are coming in his footsteps will do just as well. And as he enters into that second phase of his life, I'm looking for more productivity from him. But more importantly, I hope that he's going to enjoy whatever it is that he may have missed during the time while he was putting all his effort and his energies into meteorology in the Caribbean. So congratulations to you. Enjoy everything life has to offer, and I am sure we are going to interact again very soon.
Tyrone Sutherland has been a stalwart in the field of meteorology, both in St. Lucia, in the region, and has contributed globally in this particular field. We at CEDEMA, we've benefited from his hard work and knowledge, and we wish him well on his journey onwards to his retirement.
Tyrone. Wow, retirement, really? You must be asking, where's the time gone? You and I have known each other for many, many years as friends and colleagues. From those early days in Vancouver where you perfected those forecasting skills. Canada's Met Service should take some pride in training such an outstanding meteorologist, but also manager and leader. I remember the stories you shared about taking over the weather observing responsibilities from your mother. That makes you a third-generation meteorologist in your family. Maybe you could convince one of your grandchildren to pick up the torch. You know, in Canada, we're hiring. Seriously, you've not only been an outstanding leader in the Caribbean, but also on the world stage, serving in the various highest capacity in the World Meteorological Organization, as Vice President on the Secretariat, and as a long-standing, active and thoughtful member of the Executive Council. I've appreciated your support during my tenure as WMO President, and your sense of humor, which always breaks the tension in the discussions at WMO. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished, my friend. And Karen and I are looking forward to welcoming you and Goldie back to the Great White North. And we both wish you a very long and happy, prosperous retirement.
Actually, from the day you were born, and maybe even before, you were a meteorologist. And I've known you for nearly a quarter of a century in different capacities. In Geneva, in the sector of WMO, when you were a vice president, when you were a member of Executive Council, and I've always valued very, very much your advice. Your very frank way of speaking. You were never afraid of saying what you felt was important for the organization. Your commitment to Small Island made absolutely no doubt, but you always kept in mind the interests of all the countries of this planet, the big picture. I really will miss you, not only me, the whole committee will miss you, but I'm sure you will continue to help in a different way. So, Tyrone, thank you so much for everything you have been doing, and of course, thank you, Goldie, as well.
It's a little bit a sad moment to say farewell to you. So perhaps you have been the longest serving PR of WMO whom I know, and it has always been a great pleasure to interact with you because you have a very special sense of humor, and you have always been positive but sometimes a little bit critical, and you have been the person to put certain things on track. And when I was the PR of Finland and the EC member, I had a great pleasure to be in the capacity development working group of EC that you were chairing, and I still think that the capacity development is one of the major issues for WMO. And you have done a great job also for your sub-region, and I think that the ability of the Caribbean island states to forecast, for example, hurricanes and extreme weather. They have been radically improved because of your efforts. And my wife Anni is also missing you, and you are always welcome to Geneva. And Tyrone, all the best for you, and it's been great to have you as a friend for these years.
Hi Tyrone, just wanted to congratulate you on a well-deserved retirement and thank you for your decades of services to not only our region but to the entire WMO, working tirelessly to improve our services that have global implications. You're a true master for global partnerships and care in making it all work. But enough from hearing from me. I am convinced you would rather hear more from our team.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, Tyrone.
Congratulations to you and Goldie.
Enjoy your retirement. You'll be missed.
Yep. And I'm sure you'll go out smiling now, hearing from all of us.
Yeah, and you better get ready for the cold up there in Canada.
Yes.
Right, James?
It's cold.
We'll miss you.
We'll miss you.
Take care, Tyrone.
Bye.
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 I have known Tyrone for many years, and I can say without any doubt that he has been very influential in many aspects of our lives, both professionally and personally. There is no way we can mention Tyrone's name without associating it not only with the Caribbean, but also with the whole region, WMO Region 4, and many countries around the world who have witnessed his efforts defending their interests and well-being as a member of the WMO Executive Council for so many years. I have only words of gratefulness for Tyrone and his family for being our friends for so many years and the years to come. And yes, Tyrone, both Goldie and Gertie will have you teaching for a long time, and that, you know what I mean. Farewell, my friend. Have a very happy retirement in company of your lovely wife and your lovely family. And remember that you also have a family in Costa Rica that will always be happy to have you with us. Thank you for giving us, the meteorological community, so much. Thank you.
Hello, and greetings from Geneva, Tyrone. Congratulations and happy retirement. Let's go. Hello. Bye. Bye. Wishing you well. Bye.
Congratulations, Tyrone.
Good day, Mr. Sutherland. It was a pleasure working with you. All the best on your retirement and your future. From Natasha.
It was nice working with you, dear. Freeze off.
Happy retirement. You will freeze.
Wow, that was quite something from all these good friends and colleagues over the years. I didn't know they thought so well of me. I learn something every day.
Well, not only that, you notice they didn't say anything bad.
That's what I thought there would have been something else. No, you were just, I've just seen messages from really and truly people who've meant a lot to me because I've worked with them, Secretary Generals, past and present, President of WMO and many other colleagues, and in the region as well, that, you know, it's part of a calling, and that I think the messages show that I've enjoyed it, and maybe they didn't think too badly of me along the way, but you know, it's important that these type of relations continue in the future with others in the region. Just keep on working along the way with our global partners. I must thank them for their comments. It's been really lovely to hear.
Tyrone, it's been good having
Thank you, Peter.
We've learned a lot. I have learned a lot about meteorology, and trust me, I wasn't good at maths nor physics, but I have learned a lot. I now know, for example, when I go out and the weatherman says it's going to rain and it doesn't rain, I know now not to curse him up and not to say, hey, why don't you give me a false report and what have you.
You know, with the technology today, you can follow the weather so much easier than the old days. It's online and so on. So I recommend that people do that.
Yeah, the old days, I remember growing up in St. Lucia and looking forward to VG and the red and white flags and these type of flags to know what the weather would be like, or the siren.
Yes, that's right.
To keep us in check.
It's all different today, but the data is there.
And the technology as well.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoy the program. I am Peter Richards. Goodbye.